The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as the tall, blue-skinned Valari scientist finished her presentation. The holographic display above showed a neutron star, pulsing with dangerous energy, ready to collapse at any moment. "There is no solution," said Orla, her voice heavy with defeat. "The star will collapse within 30 days. The 3 systems in its blast radius must be evacuated immediately." The council members murmured among themselves. 3 systems meant billions of lives uprooted, countless homes abandoned, and entire civilizations scattered across the galaxy. The council leader, an ancient being with 6 eyes and crystalline skin, raised his hand for quiet. "The Valari have never been wrong in matters of astrophysics. If they say evacuation is the only option, then we must begin at once." Just as the council prepared to vote on the evacuation plan, the doors at the back of the hall opened. A group of 5 humans walked in, led by a tall man with broad shoulders and a determined look. The aliens turned to stare at the newcomers with a mixture of curiosity and annoyance. "I apologize for our late arrival," said Captain Tom Reed of the Earth Space Agency. "Our ship was delayed by an ion storm." The council leader looked down at the humans with barely hidden impatience. "The matter has been settled, Captain Reed. Your presence was a courtesy, not a necessity." Reed glanced at the holographic display, studying the neutron star. Next to him, his chief engineer Mike Davis whispered something, and Reed nodded. "With respect," Reed said, stepping forward, "we believe there might be another solution beyond evacuation." The hall erupted in a mix of laughter and scoffing sounds from various alien species. The Valari scientist Orla moved toward the humans, her face showing a mix of pity and amusement. "Captain," she said, "we have run every possible simulation. The gravitational forces involved are beyond any containment technology in the galaxy. Even our most advanced models show no path to stabilization." Mike Davis stepped forward, a small data device in his hand. "We've developed a new approach using modified gravity tethers. Our calculations suggest it might work." One of the council members, a gas-based life form contained in a floating orb, pulsed with blue light. "Humans have been part of galactic society for less than a century. The Valari have studied stars for over 10,000 years. Sometimes fresh eyes see new solutions," Reed replied calmly. Orla took the data device from Mike and quickly reviewed the information. Her expression changed from amusement to confusion. "This approach is interesting but deeply flawed," she said. "Your gravity tethers would be torn apart by the star's magnetic field before they could even begin to stabilize it." "We've accounted for that," Mike insisted. "The new alloy we've developed." "Enough," said the council leader. "The evacuation will proceed as planned. Billions of lives are at stake. We cannot waste time on untested human theories." Reed looked around the room, noting the dismissive expressions on alien faces. He had expected this reaction, but it still stung. "All we ask is permission to try," Reed said. "We won't interfere with the evacuation efforts. If we fail, no harm done. If we succeed, 3 civilizations get to keep their homes." The council chamber grew quiet as the leader considered this. Finally, he spoke. "You may attempt your solution," he said with obvious doubt. "But know this, no one will delay their evacuation plans on your account. When the star begins its final collapse, any ships in the vicinity will be destroyed." Reed nodded. "Understood." As the humans left the chamber, Orla followed them out into the corridor. "Your courage is admirable," she said, "but this is not a problem that can be solved with bravery alone. The physics are absolute." Reed smiled slightly. "You know what humans are good at, Orla. Doing things everyone else says can't be done." She watched them walk away, these strange creatures who had joined galactic society so recently yet showed such confidence. Part of her hoped they might actually succeed, even though she knew it was impossible. The fate of 3 systems now rested on what most of the galaxy considered a foolish human dream. The human ship Endeavour moved slowly toward the angry red glow of the neutron star. Through the main viewport, Captain Reed watched as flares of energy burst from the star's surface. Behind them, the evacuation fleet was already busy, thousands of ships moving back and forth between the three threatened systems. "Status report," Reed said, turning to his crew on the bridge. Mike Davis looked up from his console. "The gravity tethers are ready for deployment. Power systems at full capacity." Lisa Thompson, the ship's navigation officer, spoke next. "We're maintaining safe distance at 30,000 kilometers. Any closer and our shields won't hold against the radiation." The ship's eye, a blue holographic figure that appeared above the central console, flickered to life. "Captain, I've completed the simulations. Our chance of success is approximately 3.7%. Better odds than the 0% everyone else is giving us," Reed replied with a small smile. "Mike, explain how these tethers work again, for everyone's benefit." Mike stood up and activated a display screen. The tethers create artificial gravity wells that work together to form a stabilizing field around the star. Think of it like putting a net around an unstable object. Each point in the net helps carry the load. "And you believe this will prevent the star from collapsing?" asked Ben Roberts, the ship's medical officer. "In theory," Mike said. "The problem is, we need to deploy them in perfect synchronization, or the whole system falls apart." Reed nodded. "Let's begin. Lisa, take us into position for the first tether deployment." The Endeavour moved carefully around the perimeter of the star, dropping the first of the gravity tethers, sleek, silver devices that looked too small for the enormous job they were meant to do. "First tether activated," Mike reported. "Power flow stable. Beginning deployment of second tether." On the communication screen, a message appeared. It was Orla, the Valari scientist from the council meeting. "Captain Reed," she said, her blue face looking concerned. "Our sensors detected your tether deployment. I felt I should warn you that our models show your devices will fail within hours." "Thanks for the warning," Reed replied. "We'll take our chances." The deployment of the second tether went smoothly, but as they prepared the third, alarm signals filled the bridge. "Power surge in the first tether," Mike shouted. "The magnetic field is stronger than we calculated." On the screen showing the first tether, they watched as the device began to glow red, then white, before exploding in a flash of light. "Damage report," Reed demanded. "First tether completely destroyed," Mike said, his voice tight. "The explosion has created a ripple effect in the star's outer layer, instability increasing by 12%. Orla's face reappeared on the screen. "Captain, you're making things worse. Please, abandon this attempt before you kill yourselves." Reed looked at his crew. They all showed signs of stress, but no one looked ready to give up. "Mike, what went wrong?" Mike was already working on his console, running new calculations. "The star's magnetic field is fluctuating more than our models predicted. We need to adjust the other tethers to compensate." "Can it be done?" Reed asked. Mike hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes, but not the way we planned. We need to reconfigure the tethers while they're already deployed. It's never been attempted before." "Of course it hasn't," Reed said with a dry laugh. "That seems to be our specialty. It would require someone to get much closer to the star in a maintenance pod," Mike continued. "The radiation exposure would be significant." The bridge fell silent. Reed looked out at the angry red star that threatened 3 civilizations. "I'll do it," he said finally. Lisa shook her head. "Captain, the pod shields won't hold for more than 10 minutes at that distance. It's too dangerous." "I've got an idea," Mike said suddenly, his eyes lighting up. "What if we use the star's own magnetic field against it? We could modify the remaining tethers to create a feedback loop." "Explain," Reed said. "Instead of fighting the magnetic fluctuations, we ride them. Adjust our tethers to pulse and the opposite rhythm, like pushing a swing at just the right moment to control its movement." Reed studied Mike's new calculations on the screen. "Will it work?" "Maybe," Mike said. "It's either brilliant or suicidal. I honestly can't tell which." Reed smiled. That's humanity in a nutshell, isn't it? Let's do it. The bridge of the Endeavour was tense as Mike's fingers flew across the control panel. The remaining gravity tethers blinked on the display, showing their positions around the angry red star. Reconfiguring tether frequency now, Mike said. Sweat beaded on his forehead, despite the cool air on the bridge. If this works, we should see a stabilization effect within minutes. Reed watched the main screen where the star's activity level was displayed as a jagged red line. Everyone hold on. This could get rough. The ship trembled as the gravity tethers began their new pattern, pulsing in rhythm with the star's magnetic field, but in the opposite phase. The red line on the screen continued to spike upward for several tense moments, then suddenly dipped. It's working. Lisa called out. Instability decreased by 0.5%. A small cheer went up from the crew, but Mike raised his hand. It's just the beginning. We need at least 15% reduction to make any real difference. The communication screen lit up again. This time it wasn't Orla, but a younger Valari with lighter blue skin and curious eyes. This is Kemp, junior astrophysicist from the Valari Science Academy, he said. Our instruments detected your partial success. How did you achieve even that small reduction? Mike glanced at Reed, who nodded permission to share the information. We're using the star's own magnetic pulses to create a dampening effect, Mike explained. Like fighting fire with fire. Kemp's eyes widened. That approach was dismissed by our senior scientists a century ago as too dangerous to attempt. Sometimes danger is necessary when lives are at stake, Reed said. Kemp looked off screen for a moment, then back at the humans. A group of us younger scientists would like to help. We've been discouraged from pursuing alternative theories by our elders. Any help would be welcome, Reed replied. Over the next few hours, the Endeavour's crew worked with Kemp and his team of young Valari scientists. They refined the tether configurations, making small improvements that pushed the stability level to 3%, then 5%. Meanwhile, the evacuation continued. Most of the alien ships kept their distance from the Endeavour, but news of their small success had spread. Some captains sent messages of encouragement. Others still dismissed the human effort as futile. Captain, Lisa called from her station. The ship's power systems are struggling. The radiation from the star is affecting our generators. Reed frowned. How long can we maintain the tethers? 8 hours at most, she answered. Then we'll need to retreat to recharge our systems. If we pull back, we lose all progress, Mike said. The star will destabilize again immediately. The ship shuddered as another radiation wave hit them. Lights flickered across the bridge. The ship's eye appeared, its blue form less solid than before. Captain, I've detected an interesting pattern in the radiation, the AI said. The pulses are actually quite regular, almost like. Like what? Reed prompted. Like a power source, the AI finished. Lisa looked up sharply. Wait, could we use the star's own radiation to power the tethers? Mike's eyes widened. That's brilliant. If we reconfigure the tether absorption panels, they could draw power directly from the radiation instead of our ship. Would that work? Reed asked. In theory, Mike said, but we'd need to get much closer to the star to make the modifications. Before Reed could respond, a message came through on all channels. It was the Galactic Council leader. Attention all ships in the 3 threatened systems. The evacuation deadline approaches. All vessels must clear the danger zone within 12 hours. Any ships remaining will be considered lost. Reed looked at his crew. Decision time. We can retreat with the evacuation fleet or stay and continue our work. If we stay and fail, we die, Mike said bluntly. And if we leave, billions lose their homes, Lisa added quietly. The bridge fell silent. Then a new message appeared. It was Kemp. Captain Reed, my team and I have decided to remain and continue working with you, the young Valari said. Our ship is small, but our sensors are advanced. We can help. Reed looked around at his crew. No one needed to speak. Their determination was clear in their eyes. "Send a message to the Council," Reed ordered. "Tell them the Endeavor is staying to complete its mission." Outside the viewport, the first of the evacuation ships began jumping to faster-than-light travel, disappearing in flashes of light. But a small cluster of alien vessels moved closer to the Endeavor, breaking from the evacuation fleet. "Captain," Lisa said with surprise in her voice, "we're receiving messages from 7 other ships. They're staying to help us." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The Endeavor, now joined by 8 alien vessels, formed a loose circle around the neutron star. Each ship took responsibility for a section of the expanded gravity tether network. Mike coordinated with the engineering teams across all ships, sharing the modified designs for radiation-absorbing panels. "Tether modification teams report ready," Lisa announced from her station. "All ships are in position." Reed nodded. "Begin the sequence." One by one, small maintenance pods detached from each ship, carrying engineers toward the tethers. The pods' heat shields glowed orange as they pushed deeper into the star's radiation field. "Radiation levels at maximum safe limit," reported Ben from Medical. "The pod's shielding is holding, but just barely." On the main screen, Reed watched the dots representing each pod move toward their assigned tethers. Mike's pod was closest to the star, taking the most dangerous position. "First tether modified and reactivating," came Mike's voice over the comm. "Power level stable." "It's working, Captain. The tether is drawing energy directly from the star." Similar reports came in from the other teams. As each tether was modified, the stability reading for the star ticked upward. 10%, 12%, 15%. The modified network created a beautiful pattern around the star, visible on the ship's sensors as pulsing lines of energy connecting each tether point. It looked like a delicate web wrapped around the massive star. All teams returning to ships, Lisa reported as the maintenance pods began their retreat. When Mike returned to the bridge, his face was flushed with excitement, despite the exhaustion in his eyes. "Captain, we've done it. Stability at 18% and holding." Reed smiled but kept his eyes on the readings. "Good work, everyone. But we're not done yet. We need at least 40% stability to prevent collapse." Kemp's face appeared on the communication screen. "Captain Reed, the readings from our sensors show something interesting. The star's core fluctuations have changed their pattern. It's almost as if..." "As if what?" Reed prompted. "As if the star is responding to the tethers," Kemp finished. "Like a living system adjusting to new conditions." Mike frowned, studying the new data. "That shouldn't be possible. Unless..." His words were cut off by an alert from the ship's eye. "Captain, I've detected unusual energy readings from the third moon of the second planet in the system." "Show me," Reed ordered. The screen shifted to show a small cratered moon. The AI highlighted a section near the equator where energy readings pulsed in a pattern similar to their tether network. "That can't be natural," Lisa said. "It's not," Kemp confirmed, his voice excited. "Those are ruins of the ancestor civilization. They vanished 50,000 years ago, but their technology still exists in some places." Reed exchanged glances with Mike. Could they have dealt with unstable stars too? "It's possible," Kemp said. "The ancestors were far more advanced than even the Valari, but most of their knowledge was lost." "We need to investigate those ruins," Reed decided. "There might be something there that could help us." The communication screen split, showing Orla's face alongside Kemp's. "Captain Reed, this is reckless," she said. "The evacuation deadline has passed. You and your allies are the only ships left in the danger zone. Yet you're still watching us," Reed noted with a small smile. Orla's blue skin darkened slightly. "Scientific curiosity. Nothing more." "We're going to check those ruins," Reed told her. "Your readings confirm we bought some time with the tether network." "A temporary reprieve at best," Orla insisted. "The Valari High Council has ordered all observing ships to maintain safe distance. They believe your efforts will ultimately fail. Then they have nothing to worry about by letting us try, Reed replied. After ending the communication, Reed turned to his crew. Mike, you'll stay here and monitor the tether network with Lisa. Ben, you're with me. We'll take a shuttle to those ruins. I'm coming too, said Kemp, who had transported over to the Endeavor. My people studied the ancestors extensively. I can help interpret what we find. As they prepared to depart, Reed looked back at the view screen showing the angry red star partially contained by their delicate web of gravity tethers. The image reminded him of an ancient Earth story, humans holding back a force of nature with nothing but ingenuity and determination. The shuttle departed the Endeavor, heading toward the mysterious moon and whatever secrets it might hold from a long-vanished civilization that once faced the same impossible challenge. The shuttle touched down on the moon's dusty surface with a gentle thud. Through the viewport, Reed could see crumbling structures that rose from the gray landscape like broken teeth. The ruins glowed with a faint blue light that pulsed in rhythm with their distant tether network. Atmosphere is thin but breathable, Ben reported, checking his instruments. Temperature minus 20 degrees. Reed nodded. Suits on, but helmets optional. Let's move quickly. The three of them, Reed, Ben, and Kemp, stepped out onto the moon's surface. The low gravity made their movements bouncy and awkward. Kemp seemed more comfortable, his Velari physiology better adapted to varying gravitational conditions. This way, Kemp said, pointing toward the largest structure. The energy readings are strongest there. As they approached, Reed's communicator buzzed. It was Mike from the Endeavor. Captain, how are things going down there? Mike's voice sounded tense. Just arrived. Heading to the main structure now. Status update. Not good. Star stability is dropping again. We're down to 14%. Something's changing in the core dynamics. Reed exchanged worried glances with Ben. Understood. We'll hurry. The entrance to the structure was a tall archway carved with symbols that glowed when they approached. Kemp studied them with obvious excitement. These are ancestor glyphs, he explained. They tell a story of a star sickness. I think they faced a similar problem. They moved deeper into the structure, which opened into a vast circular chamber. In the center stood a pillar of crystal that pulsed with the same blue light they had seen outside. It's beautiful, Ben whispered. Kemp moved to a panel near the crystal. This is some kind of control system. The ancestors were masters of gravity manipulation. They cooled. His words were cut short by a violent tremor that shook the entire structure. Dust and small pieces of ceiling rained down on them. What was that? Reed demanded into his communicator. Mike's voice came back, filled with alarm. Massive solar flare. Biggest one yet. It disrupted 3 of our tethers. Stability down to 9% and falling fast. Another voice broke in. It was Orla. Captain Reed, the star is entering final collapse phase. Your tether network is failing. You must evacuate immediately. Reed looked at the crystal pillar, which now pulsed faster, almost frantically. Kemp, can you make sense of this technology? Could it help us? Kemp's fingers moved over the ancient controls. I think this is what they use to save their own star, but it's not designed to stabilize. It's designed to transform. Transform? Ben asked. Transform how? Instead of fighting the collapse, they guided it, Kemp explained, his voice rising with excitement. They turned their dying star into a pulsar, still dangerous, but stable in its own way. The communicator buzzed again. Captain. It was Lisa this time. 2 of our allied ships have been damaged by the flare. They're evacuating their crews to the other vessels. We need to leave now. Reed looked at Kemp. Can we use this? Can we apply their technology to our tethers? The principles are similar, Kemp said, but we'd need to completely reconfigure our network. Instead of creating a containing web, we'd need to make a funnel to direct the collapse energy. Another violent shake nearly knocked them off their feet. "Download everything you can," Reed ordered. "We're heading back." The return journey to the shuttle was difficult as the moon's surface buckled and trembled with the star's increasing instability. Once aboard and lifting off, they could see the star clearly through the viewport. It was no longer simply angry red, but had patches of white-hot fury erupting across its surface. When they docked with the Endeavour, the scene on the bridge was chaotic. Warning alarms sounded from multiple stations. The main display showed 3 of their tethers completely destroyed and 2 more failing. "Status report," Reed called out as he, Ben, and Kemp rushed onto the bridge. "Star stability at 6% and dropping," Lisa reported grimly. "At this rate, total collapse in less than 5 hours. And it's worse than the original scenario," Mike added. "Our failed tether network has created additional instability. When it goes, the explosion will be 30% more powerful than originally predicted." Reed turned to Kemp. "Explain your pulsar idea to Mike." Now, as Kemp and Mike huddled over the engineering console, the communication screen lit up with multiple signals. It was the commanders of their allied ships. "Captain Reed," said the leader of an insectoid species, "2 of our vessels are crippled. We must retreat while we still can." "I understand," Reed replied. "Thank you for staying as long as you did." One by one, the Allied ships sent their farewells and broke away, heading to safe distance. Only Kemp's research vessel remained alongside the Endeavour. "We should go too," Ben said quietly. Reed looked at Mike and Kemp, still working frantically at the console. "Mike." Mike looked up, his face showing both fear and determination. Kemp's idea might work, but the odds are bad, really bad. The Endeavour shuddered as another wave of energy washed over it. On the bridge, Reed gripped the edge of a console to stay upright. "Explain the plan," he said to Mike and Kemp. Mike pulled up a holographic display showing the remaining gravity tethers arranged around the star. "Instead of trying to contain the collapse, we guide it. We reconfigure the tethers to create a gravitational funnel that directs the collapse energy along a specific path." "Like a controlled explosion," Reed said, understanding dawning. "Exactly," Kemp nodded. "The Ancestors' data shows this can channel the most destructive energy away from the populated systems." Lisa looked skeptical. "But the star still explodes." "It transforms," Kemp corrected, "into a pulsar, a rapidly rotating neutron star that emits regular pulses of radiation. Dangerous, yes, but predictable and stable in its own way." "And the 3 systems?" Reed asked. Mike's face was grim. "They'll experience significant radiation when the transformation happens, but it won't be extinction level. With proper shielding, most should survive." Another violent shake rocked the ship. Warning lights flashed across multiple consoles. "Hull integrity at 70%, reported Ben from his station. "We can't take much more of this." Reed made his decision. "Begin reconfiguration of the tether network. Lisa, contact the evacuation fleet. Tell them our plan and the expected radiation path. They need to position their ships to shield the most vulnerable planets." The bridge crew moved with purpose, each focused on their tasks. Outside, the star grew increasingly unstable, its surface churning with massive flares and dark patches that seemed to swallow light itself. "Tether reconfiguration in progress," Mike reported. "Estimated time to completion, 40 minutes. "The star doesn't have 40 minutes, Kemp said, his blue skin pale with stress. "My calculations show collapse beginning in 30 minutes, possibly less." Reed pressed the ship-wide communication button. "Attention all crew. This is Captain Reed. We are implementing a high-risk plan to transform the star. All non-essential personnel should board escape pods immediately as a precaution. This is not an evacuation order, but a safety measure." He turned to Lisa. "Program the escape pods for maximum distance in the safest direction. Make sure everyone has a fighting chance." Lisa nodded and began the preparations. Meanwhile, Mike and Kemp worked frantically. their fingers flying over controls as they reprogrammed each remaining tether. 20 minutes later, disaster struck. A massive power surge rolled through the ship, knocking out main power. Emergency lights flickered on, casting the bridge in an eerie red glow. "Damage report," Reed called out. "Main power core overloaded," Mike reported. "Switching to backup systems, but they're at 30% capacity. Not enough to complete the tether reconfiguration remotely." Reed's eyes narrowed. "What are our options?" Mike hesitated, then said, "Someone needs to take the maintenance pod out to the last 3 tethers and reconfigure them manually." The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant: a suicide mission. The radiation levels near the tethers would be fatal within minutes. "I'll go," Reed said firmly. "Captain." "No," Lisa protested. "We need you here." "This was my mission, my responsibility," Reed insisted. "Mike, you know this ship better than anyone. You need to be here to coordinate the transformation sequence once the tethers are ready." Before anyone could argue further, the ship rocked with another violent explosion. Sparks flew from one of the rear consoles. "Hull breach on deck 4, Ben shouted. "Automatic seals engaged, but structural integrity is failing. We have 15 minutes. 20 at most." Reed stood tall, looking at each of his crew members. "Get to the escape pods. All of you." "That's an order." "Not happening, Captain," Mike said, crossing his arms. "I'm staying to coordinate from here." "I'll stay too," Lisa said firmly. Reed knew arguing would waste precious time. "Fine. Ben, get everyone else off the ship. Now." As Ben rushed to organize the evacuation, Reed prepared to board the maintenance pod. Kemp approached him, holding a small device. "This contains the final configuration codes," the young Valeri explained. "Input them in sequence at each tether control panel. You'll have approximately 2 minutes at each tether before radiation exposure becomes problematic." Reed took the device and nodded his thanks. The unspoken truth hung between them. 2 minutes per tether meant certain death by the third one. As Reed headed for the launch bay, the communication screen activated. Orla's face appeared, her expression no longer condescending but filled with concern. "Captain Reed, our long-range sensors detect your ship in critical condition. The star will collapse in minutes. Please evacuate while you still can." "We have a plan, Orla," Reed replied as he walked. "But I could use a favor. Broadcast these coordinates to any ship still in range. The 3 systems need to know where the radiation will be directed when we transform the star." Orla studied the data, her eyes widening. This might actually work, but your ship will do its job," Reed finished, "just like we always do." As Reed reached the maintenance pod, he heard running footsteps behind him. It was Mike. "Captain," he said, breathless, "the pod's radiation shielding won't hold, but I've made modifications to your suit. It should buy you an extra minute at each tether." Reed clasped Mike's shoulder. "Get back to the bridge. Be ready to activate the sequence the moment I finish." With a final nod to his engineer, Reed entered the pod and prepared for launch. Through the small viewport, he could see the star, their impossible challenge, waiting for him. The maintenance pod shot out from the Endeavor, streaking toward the first tether. Through the viewport, Reed could see the star's surface boiling with energy, great loops of plasma arcing thousands of kilometers into space. His suit's sensors screamed warnings about the radiation levels, but Reed ignored them. "Approaching first tether," he reported over the comm. "Beginning reconfiguration." Reed docked the pod against the tether control module. His hands moved quickly over the panel, inputting the codes Kemp had provided. The screen flashed green as the changes took effect. "First tether reconfigured," he announced, already moving back to the pod. "Heading to tether 2. "Good work, Captain," Mike's voice came through, strained but steady. "Star collapse accelerating. You have 12 minutes remaining." The pod jerked violently as it approached the second tether. A solar flare had passed dangerously close, disrupting the pod's stabilizers. Reed fought with the controls, managing to bring the small craft alongside the second tether. This time, the reconfiguration was harder. His vision blurred slightly as radiation seeped through his protective suit. Reed blinked hard, focusing on the control panel. "Second tether complete," he gasped, moving to the third. On the Endeavor's bridge, Lisa and Mike watched Reed's life signs with growing concern. His heart rate was elevated, and the radiation exposure indicator had turned from yellow to orange. "His suit can't take much more," Lisa whispered. The communication screen activated suddenly. It was Orla, but she wasn't alone. Behind her stood several other Valari scientists, including members of the High Council. "We've analyzed your transformation plan," Orla said without preamble. "It's promising, but your captain won't survive to complete it." "We know," Mike replied grimly. "We can help," Orla continued. "My ship can reach the third tether before your captain. We have better radiation shielding." Mike and Lisa exchanged surprised looks. "Why would you help us now?" Lisa asked. Orla's expression was complex. "Because sometimes being right matters less than being helpful. Because sometimes, even Valari can learn new things." Out by the second tether, Reed was struggling to return to his pod. His movements had become sluggish, the radiation affecting his muscles. As he pulled himself into the pod, he saw warning lights flashing across the control panel. The engines were failing. "Bridge, we have a problem," he reported. "Pod engines compromised. I can reach the third tether on maneuvering thrusters, but it will be close." The pod limped toward the final tether, moving painfully slowly. Reed checked the countdown timer. 7 minutes until star collapse. It would take at least 5 to reach the tether. Suddenly, another ship appeared alongside the pod. It was sleek and blue. A Valari vessel. Orla's voice came through the comm. "Captain Reed, dock with our ship immediately. We will complete the final reconfiguration." Reed hesitated, then realized this was their only chance. He adjusted course, bringing the damaged pod alongside the Valari ship. When the airlock opened, Orla herself was waiting, dressed in a protective suit. "You've done enough, Captain," she said, helping him aboard. "My team will finish this." Back on the Endeavor, Mike watched as the Valari ship reached the final tether. "They're doing it," he said in disbelief. "They're actually helping us." "Final tether reconfigured," Orla's voice announced triumphantly. "Funnel complete. Initiate transformation sequence." Mike's fingers flew across the console, activating the reconfigured tether network. The gravity funnel formed around the star, invisible except on their sensor displays, where it appeared as a cone-shaped field extending from the star's north pole. "All hands brace for transformation," Lisa called over the ship-wide comm. The star seemed to pause for one breathless moment. Then it happened. The surface collapsed inward, energy rushing toward the core. But instead of exploding outward in all directions, the energy followed the funnel, erupting in a concentrated beam away from the inhabited systems. The Endeavor rocked violently as the transformation wave hit it. Lights flickered, and for a moment it seemed the ship would break apart. Then systems stabilized, emergency power holding. "We did it," Mike whispered, staring at the readings. "Star transformation complete. Pulsar formation. Stable." Where the unstable red giant had been, a compact neutron star now spun rapidly, emitting regular pulses of radiation in a tight beam along the funnel's path, safely away from the 3 systems. The communication system crackled to life. It was the Galactic Council leader, his 6 eyes wide with amazement. "This is unprecedented," he said. "The 3 systems report minimal damage. Radiation levels high but survivable. You've saved billions of lives." On the Valari ship, Reed watched the newly formed pulsar through a viewport. Its regular flashes of light seemed almost like a heartbeat, or perhaps a message, a reminder that even the most destructive forces could be guided rather than simply contained. Orla joined him at the viewport, The Valari have been the most advanced species in the galaxy for 10,000 years, she said quietly. We forgot what it was like to learn something new. Reed smiled tiredly. That's the thing about humans. We're always learning because we have to. Because we refuse to accept impossible. As news spread through the galaxy, ships began returning to the three systems. Families who thought they had lost their homes forever were coming back. And in the night sky of each world, a new star pulsed with regular, predictable light. No longer a threat, but a reminder of what could be accomplished when determination met challenge. The impossible had been done. Humans had shown the way.